Good morning. So today I thought I would come on and kind of tell you a little bit about who I am and how I came to be a healer and where I am today. And trying to see if anybody out there can relate to this story, right? So when I was younger, I definitely was the kid that didn't fit in. I always felt like I was in the island of misfit toys, if you're from my era and you remember that particular Christmas special. So, and what I mean by that is I was different, right? I listen to the other people's stories for the people that are in my friends that are mediums and healers and psychics. And I feel like my story is even different from theirs, right? Because they say, when I was younger, my grandmother would come into my room and I saw things that I saw people in places that I wouldn't have known about, or, I could tell my mother things about my grandmother who had already passed. And you know what? I didn't have experiences like that. And I kind of, at that point in my life, I kind of wanted them because I knew I was very interested in the spiritual world and metaphysics and that sort of thing. And I would have at that time loved that, but that's not what happened. What I did find is that I was super empathic. Now I'm using that word now, but when I was younger, I did not know the word empathic, right? What I knew is that I would read. I remember reading a comic strip, and one of the characters in the comic strip had something bad happen to them, and they felt really, really badly, and I almost started to cry. Like I could feel what the cartoon character was feeling, and my family kind of teased me and made fun of me for it, and I didn't know what that was at the time. And clearly I didn't even know how to manage that at the time, because every place I would go, school, etc., I could feel what other people were feeling and I would absorb it. And I had no idea how to manage it. But I also didn't realize that other people didn't experience that as well. So I didn't realize that other people couldn't feel other people's feelings. I just thought that was normal. And I didn't learn that until I went to graduate school, to be a therapist. So I went through my life really, and no matter where I went, people can feel that I can feel their feelings. So what I've come to understand is that when you are both empathic and also a healer, there's sort of this double energy, right? You have the ability to understand people's feelings and absorb them, but also there's something that radiates from you that is something that encourages other people. There's a pull to change there. So what I also didn't realize is at the time, when I was a kid, there were people that really wanted to be in my energy field, because I certainly do have a lot of energy. But also there were, looking back, now I know this, but then I didn't, that there were people that were actually felt that pull from me, that pull to change, and they weren't ready for it. So they didn't understand what they were feeling. I didn't understand what I was giving off. And they were repulsed by that. And some people would actually get very angry with me. And looking back, I'm like, okay, sure, I'm annoying, but I can see where I would annoy people because I do have a lot of energy and I talk a lot. But some people would actually get angry at me. I remember having a boss that actually sat me down in his office and started giving me this lecture. And I was standing there going, I try to be the best person I can, the best worker. I'm not just on time. I'm early. I worked in a methadone clinic. It was a tough job. And I'm like, why is this person so angry at me? Like he was talking down to me and I'm saying, I don't know why I'm here. Obviously I didn't say that to him, but I was terrified because I spent my life trying not to upset other people and just fit in. So I definitely had this thing where people either really wanted to be around me and wanted that energy, or people were really repelled by it. But I also found that it was tough for me to fit into a friend group, right? Because I always had this drive to point things out that other people didn't say out loud. And I sort of do that also as an adult, and I call it the pink elephant syndrome, right? And so I'm to be the person in the room, looking at the pink elephant, and everybody's kind of, looking around like nobody sees it, and I'm like, are you telling me nobody sees that pink elephant sitting over there? And everybody's like, And so I became the person that would point out that pink elephant, and nobody liked that. Like it was another thing that kind of got me ostracized looking back. And now it's something that people pay me to do, right? Sometimes people come in as couples and they want me to pull out that thing or to say that thing about their spouse or whatever, or about their spouse's family or stuff like that they can't say, but they want me to say it. And I do say it, and either that person doesn't come back ever again, or it starts a fight or whatever. So I also found that I'm the person who has to say things that are there, like I can't help it. So when I was younger, I was definitely that person who was empathetic, but to a fault almost, because I would do it for other people and then find like, how come nobody's doing that for me? And then you go back and forth between, having that drive to do that and then feeling resentful that nobody's kind of doing it back for you. And then people that are repulsed by it, that are actually physically angry and will actually do things like, I remember in high school, roller skating was a big deal. And I was so excited that a girl from school actually called me and asked me if I wanted to go roller skating with a group of girls. And I was so excited. I asked my mom and she said yes. And my God, I was so excited. And I called her back and I was like, I think I was maybe 14. And I was like, oh, my mom said yes. Okay, so when can we go? And she was like, what are you talking about? I didn't ask you to go roller skating. And I don't know if there was a group of them there. But that was really hurtful. Like I still remember that now. And I'm like, why is it that people need to be purposely mean to me? Like, why is that so much fun? I mean, to purposely pick me out. So I must have been an easy target because I felt things so deeply that it was easy. It was fun to see my reaction, is my guess. I don't know. So there's that. But I did not necessarily have experiences where I saw spirits or heard things, right? But I wanted that would have been a blessing to me at the time, because at least I would have been able to have something. I don't know if I would have said it to other people at the time, now looking back, because it would have called me out as even more different. So maybe that was probably a good thing that I couldn't do that at the time, or at least I was not aware of that. But some other things that did happen for me that I did not pinpoint until more recently, when I've been doing more exploration in classes and mentorships and that sort of thing about the metaphysical piece of myself, is that, first of all, we did a project on Egypt when I was in middle school, and I remember being so enchanted with that project about Egypt. I actually did, those display cases in middle school. They're like, or the hallway schools, and they're like these big display cases. Well, I was so excited I was so into the study of Egypt and the pyramids and the gods and goddesses and kings and pharaohs, etc., that I just filled up one of these display cases voluntarily because I just was so excited about the project. And I didn't think about anything about that until, fast forward to over 30 years later, 35, I don't even say how many years later. Now, when I talk to my mentors and they say, well, we've talked to your spirit guides, say that you're really connected to Egypt and pyramids and sort of that transformation of what the pyramids mean and the connections, sending connections to the higher realms. I'm like, okay, wow, that makes sense why I was so connected to that. But at the time, it didn't make sense. The other thing that happened that was very interesting is that I remember once having this rock collection, and those cases that you get and you put in the garage, and they have little drawers in them, and they're for like, screws and washers for little tiny things. And there's these little drawers, and I took one in my bedroom and I started collecting rocks. Don't ask me at the time. I was like, I don't know why I'm doing this, but I just was fascinated with rocks. And up here we have like quartz and mica and that sort of thing. I'm in New England. So I started making drawers with, I would get each drawer would have a different rock in it that had a different mineral. And I took little note cards and I would make notes on my note cards about where I found it and what mineral I thought it was and that sort of thing. And And I don't remember how long I did that for, and we didn't have the internet. We had an Encyclopedia Britannica because at the time it was, the early or mid 80s, and we didn't have the internet. So again, I look back on that and say, what the hell was I thinking? Like, what was I doing? Did I think I was going to be a geologist or something? And I kind of stopped doing that. But now I look back on it and I'm, again, learning about that. Now I'm being told you're supposed to be working with crystals. So now, okay, that makes sense to me. That's why I'm so drawn to these rocks. I felt something in them, something healing, and I felt a need to be connected to them, and that they were helping me and helping me to help other people. And I could not voice that at the time. But it was just that one more thing that made me feel sort of awkward and that I didn't fit in with everybody else because I had nobody I could talk to about that kind of stuff, And then, so getting older, when I was in college, I really thought that I wanted to work with animals. I really wanted to be a vet. So I started I guess at the time was sort of like a pre-med program or pre-vet program. You took zoology. So I majored in zoology. And let me tell you, after my first year of college, when zoology, I remember being in zoology classes, and in high school I had advanced placement classes and things, and again I now know that I probably had some ADD. I really have some sort of learning disability, and I struggled between, I wasn't at grade level, but when I would get into the more advanced classes, I also struggled too. It's hard for me to read things that I'm not super interested in. It's hard for me to write and that sort of thing. So I'm pretty sure I have ADD, whatever else I have, I'm not sure. But when I tried to do zoology in college, I, again, had that feeling of you're in the wrong place. And I remember being in class, and I'll never forget this. I don't know what a fasciola hepatica is, but that's the word that I remember. So where I'm in this lecture hall, and there's these slides up in front of the lecture hall, and everybody's like, that's the fasciola hepatica. And I'm like, going through my notebook going, how do these people remember this crap? Like, clearly, once again, I'm in the wrong place, and I actually failed a class for the first time ever, and I was so mortified because I took so much time to try to get good grades, and it was a lot of work for me. It took a lot of effort for me to get good grades, but I really put all my effort into it. So I learned, and I was really upset by it, that I was not going to be a scientist. It was not my thing, and I really had to do a soul search. And I sort of fell into human studies and counseling when I talked to an advisor, because I was just kind of like, I don't know what else I'm supposed to do here. But I ended up getting my bachelor's degree in human development and family studies, and then kind of went into the work world, work for a methadone clinic. And then at the time, you really needed a license and a master's degree in order to be able to work in the field of counseling. So I went back to school and got a graduate degree in marriage and family therapy. And then I felt like I was really in my element. So in marriage and family therapy, we learn about systemic family therapy. And also in the therapy world, spirituality has become a very important tool. In fact, the American Medical Association has really emphasized the fact that spirituality is an important part of mental and physical and emotional physical health. And so that fit for me to be able to slide naturally into counseling. And I got my graduate degree in 2000. And then, soon after that, I got my license in marriage and family therapy. So making this a long story, but in a separate piece, I can talk about sort of the spiritual piece and how I became connected. And in my next video, I will talk about my Uncle Danny, who sort of let me know that I needed to be working with the spiritual world a little bit more than I realized I needed to. So I'm going to be talking about that in the next piece. Thanks very much for listening, guys.